Morning, welcome to Morning Outlook. This is Kim speaking on Monday the 5th of June. So weekend wise, well, we did have a bit of action on OPEC over the weekend. They've decided to, by the looks of it, cut to the oil output from 2024, so it's probably to react to the world slowdown, or expected slowdown. We'll see. Anyway, for now, aside of that, it seems to be to and fro-ing on terms of what the US are going to do, or the Fed's going to do when they meet, decide interest rates in just over a week's time. And that's really what's causing this sort of the movement that we're seeing more recently in these markets. Rally on, rally off. Anyway, let's run through the technicals. Actually, let's just look at the fundamentals for this week. It's possible risk impact. As I said, the OPEC meetings took place over the weekend. We got Lagarde speaking this afternoon, and then the ISM services PMI coming out for the US. So key data that is, but we've seen earlier numbers coming out on it. We'll see what happens, but at 3 p.m. we could see some action there. Be wary. Tomorrow then, Aussie dollar, the Reserve Bank of Australia's cash rate expected to be stalled here at 3.85. And then later in the week we got the Bank of Canada on the 7th there, again expected to have be on hold here now at 4.5, and then next week it's really what I'm really looking at is we've got the US meeting there, and well, they probably haven't put the expectation figure in here yet because it keeps up going up and down, but it's currently on 5.25. Well, we'll see. Anyway, this week with two central banks, got to be a bit careful, tread carefully, but yeah, there's not a great deal other. So technically, let's just go and have a look at these markets purely technically. The euro dollar this morning, well, Friday sold off there, continuing through this morning. At the moment, it's looking like it wants to continue the move that was started on Friday. Now, quite often this will come down into some sort of divergence here on the euro dollar. It could go either way post 8 o'clock. So often we've seen what looked like a decent move kicking in and following through to the downside there, only for it to completely turn. So bit wary of the euro's movements of late. The pound dollar, with the pound softening as well here, it's really chopping off this morning a lot more. It's broken the lows that were in there, taking those prior lows out there and looking a bit soft. Already down to the S1, breaking the S1. Goodness, if I talk any longer, it'll probably be down to its S2. More probability of it actually coming through to the S2. Now it's hit the S1, hasn't hit the pivot. So we'll see what happens post 8 o'clock though on that. Again, we can see some quite quick turns in these markets in the mornings, often even leaving it until late as 9 o'clock sort of thing before it shapes up. US dollar yen, well, shoving up at the moment. On Friday, softening there with the US dollar getting stronger, and well, it started off that way this morning so far through the Asian session. A little bit of a retrace. Again, probably got a bit of divergence in around here. If you can get any further push up here, if we could get the momentum coming in here, that could all be taken out and we could be running back towards those prior highs. It certainly looks like it, but as I say, got to watch. I haven't got an immediate trade sitting there on that basis. Australian dollar, well, last week it had been sold off nicely, but only to rally as we saw the chance of a standoff on interest rates in the US, which has been sort of priced in and then not priced in, and is causing people to scratch their head a lot. And well, the markers have got the jitters in a sense. Looking at things at the moment, well, the Aussie looks like it's running down from its daily pivot. Looks like a reasonable trade back down there. That's probably, I'm going to put that on my little watch list this morning post 8 o'clock, but that does look like it's got scope to push on down there towards its S1 in in line with a bigger trend. US dollar CAD, now the CAD has held on to its movement, didn't come back the same as the other currencies there. US dollar not managing to rally against it so much there, and we've got this consolidation around the lows. It's a bit messy when you come down to the hourlies here. It could still, we could still see a breakdown again. Well, I say again, but with this we could just see it chopping around. It's held up quite well until now. New Zealand dollar. Well, this looks like it's sort of hit the bottom side of the, or come back to the bottom side of its channel. It's whether or not this morning it takes a break below the weekly pivot there. That for me is then a bit more of a bearish signal. That weekly pivot corresponds with a quarterly pivot. Weekly pivot, just yeah, there's quite a lot sitting around that sort of area in terms of potential support, just coming back a step. So we've got the weekly pivot sitting there, the quarterly pivot. So a break perhaps below that quarterly pivot on here runs then down towards the S1. We haven't hit the pivot, so potential for further downside there. So that's worth a look later, as to say, as we go through the morning as well. Euro yen, this is going completely opposite way really. It's been pushing back towards the highs there. This is still one of the most shorted currency pairs out there, the euro yen, and at some stage, if we were to get a bit of surge, we could see some huge momentum suddenly build in there as it squeezes the shorts, but not really setting the world alight at the way it's running at the moment. It's quite choppy. There is the potential, as I say, it still looks more potential to the upside than the downside on this at the moment. Okay, that's euro yen. Looking at other pairs, just quick look at the euro pound, not necessarily to trade, but the euro is just catching the upside at the moment. Again, we're running into the underside of the pivot there. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Last week it came off quite nicely for the earlier part of the week and then just fizzled out. Are we going to get another shove to the downside? Doesn't look like it at the moment. EURGBP looks interesting this morning. To be fair, it's already sold quite a distance. It's in a bit of no man's land. Oh, sorry, I'll go back a step. A bit of no man's land in terms of the pivots at the moment. Yes, well, monthly S1 just not far below, along with a quarterly pivot. That might provide some solid old support at that point. But at the moment, it's really looking quite bearish as we run through here. So we could see a continuation. Again, it's well worth waiting. We've got the S1 below. Again, if that's hit before the daily pivot, scope for further downside, just like we saw there on Friday. So we'll see what develops on this as we run through the morning. Again, it's on my little list, on my watch list this morning. Likes of pound Aussie, well, this can be such a chop case. It does look like, well, it's put a higher low in. There's some divergence across the highs there on some of the different indicators, but quite a sell-off it came into on Friday, and it really, I mean, the Australian dollar's been about the weakest out there, and yet it got absolutely caned on Friday, the pound against the Aussie. There we go. The pound got caned regardless. Nothing there for the moment, but again against the CAD, etc. It's really taken a struggle this morning. Again, close to its S1, no pivot here. If you're looking for a continuation, we could see that, but again, I'll wait until post 8 o'clock. Morning, guys. Sorry, Michael, Sean, Ian. See you all coming in there. Yarrow on the other side there. Aussie CAD. Aussie CAD. do like this pair often. Again, I'm just looking at here. We've had the larger sell-off there. Again, it looked like it was going to go a bit earlier, but last week, but managed to run into its pivot in the end. But it's reacted to that pivot and looking on the softer side. So coming off the weekly pivot. Again, here it might be for more conservative traders. It may be worth just waiting to see if we get a break of these lows here to confirm a wave to the downside, and then we've got that lovely pivot sitting below there. So as a target at least, if not the lows. Right, okay, that will do for the Forex for this morning, because we've got quite a bit to look at there. Actually, I will just look at the Aussie New Zealand dollar, because that's also having a little slip. But it's nice. It's broken this trend line now. This trend line properly now. It's closed above it last week. No, I'll scrap that. Let's leave that. Right, let's go and have a look at the indices. And firstly, of course, gold. Let's come back to the dailies here. So gold Friday, no surprises, followed the suit of everything else. Seeing a sell-off there. Just still to me looks relatively weak, but of course with the Fed meeting next week and everything that sort of gets lined up, the standard sort of are they, aren't they situations, and I think last week was the last week of speakers. I'm not so sure if they're allowed to speak any further this week, but either way, just got to be a bit wary of the figures that are sort of coming through to see if there's pressure to put further increases on the Feds or not. But for now, bit messy on that, and it looks bearish. So oil, well, no surprises. We saw a little shove up on the suggestion of oil cuts, but it's come straight off. It's filled the gap almost immediately. So still looking iffy. I mean, it had already sort of pushed up on. I don't know whether there was a lot of belief in terms of that they would cut rates. So there was the gossip of it. So will they have? Key thing now is if it can break back above the highs here, it becomes bullish again. Otherwise, it's or more bullish. He says bullish, a bit bullish again. But the thing is, they cut rates because they see an economic slowdown. So it's not necessarily changing the status quo there. CSI 300 then this morning, still bearish to me, and it sold off this morning. Not a lot to add there. A lot of markets are in there sort of going through, like the Nikkei here absolutely flying, and yet another gap up there still remains really bullish. Not a lot to add to that really. It's hard to get into a market when it's doing flying off like this. These little retracements were it. Difficult one to go looking for. The Nifty 50, it too still looking more on the bullish side of things. Same sort of pattern that we're seeing with the Nikkei really, and looking solid there. Aussie 200 was coming off last week. It's finally taken a bit of a bounce there. Actually, it came through on Thursday, pushed through a little bit here. There is a trend line across the highs of this, which I would watch for. It has run into the 34 again at the moment. It seems to be a bit sticky around that more recently, but it's closed for now, and not the most bullish looking bar. Still, as I say, still as long as it's below this trend line, it still remains bearish, even though it had a bit of a push there. Now, leading the markets are the US markets, and we're sort of going back into bull rallies and things like this. People are getting all excited out there as we've taken out all the highs here. We need to come out to the weeklies to go and, ooh, come on, there we go. See, put things into perspective. It's yep, it's had a decent run, and it's back there, back on the more bullish side of things. Got scope when everyone gets a bit excited in here to push on further. It's really led by the techs. The Dow, well, it did eventually get a bit of a push up there on Friday, but it's taken all this time. It's been lagging everything else, as ever with the Dow or any of the US markets. often the weakest is then dragged up by the strongest, and when something really happens, we get this sort of surges, and they can be quite big, and that's just what we've seen in the Dow. And the Nasdaq, well, that's been pushing up all the way through this. Been bullish on this for ages, and it continues to be so. It's not a great place to be buying in though at the moment, potentially. Intraday you might get into some retracements. DAX, well, the DAX has picked up on Thursday, Friday last week again, following the other markets really taking out the highs here. The actual idea of interest rates coming to a halt everywhere has probably given the equity markets the hope they needed, although the fundamentals aren't necessarily all there to go with it, but for now at least everything's pushing on through. This DAX up this morning, taking out the previous highs, looking relatively solid. Almost said soft for a minute, but relatively solid until it dips down again after I've finished this video. The FTSE making a bit of a recovery there. It's been quite lame of late. It's fallen back a lot further than it's no longer the darling at the moment. It's a bit like the Dow effectively in terms of its lagging. It had a reasonable surge up there on Friday. It's whether or not can follow through today, but mixed data in the UK, and it may just hold it back a little bit more. Right, okay, there's the equity markets and how they're looking at the moment. The quick look at what's happened over the weekend in the world of the Bitcoin, and it's not looking particularly great. This is the dailies, not a lot of volume going through. I say not a lot of volume, but certainly not a lot of price action on Saturday and Sunday there, and coming off on Monday. Sounds like a bit like a Craig David song coming through here. Hang on. Coming down the time frame certainly looked soft there as it sort of pushed through, which is going well. I suppose US dollar strength across most of the markets, it makes sense to see this follow through. So looking soft there. Ethereum down this morning as well. Again, all a bit slow here. They're not. It's just still tightening and tightening. At some stage maybe we'll get a surge one way or t'other, but for now Chainlink just sitting there consolidated. Litecoin was the prettier of them last week, but that too is also retracing at the moment. Okay, that's it for me. I wish you a great day's trading, and I'll catch you tomorrow morning. Take care guys, and see you then. Bye for now.